See, I told you we
Awesome.
couldn't do without Cindy.
Over to
Cindy.
you, Rebecca. Thank you.
Okay, so I have the honor of introducing Arlene. So how she came to be in her position, we did a social needs assessment here, and there were a variety of needs for our seniors as we have an aging community in our region. So we put in a grant app and her position was born. So it's a collaboration between the Mountain Rose Center, the Rocky Housing Council, and FCSS. And Arlene has become an amazing point person for the seniors in our region. She's been raising awareness, working on some of the needs that have arisen, such as transportation, housing, and she's been out on the forefront doing all the groundwork, building relationships with the seniors and meeting them where they're at. Technology is not always their friend, and she has no problem getting out there and just meeting them right face to face, even in amongst all of the complications that the pandemic has brought forward. So I am honored to introduce Arlene, and she can tell you guys a bit more about what she's been up to.
Thanks so much, Rebecca. Well, part of the needs assessment, it identified that there needs to be more awareness. The seniors don't know about all the programs that exist. And so one of the challenges is making them more aware. The internet and being constantly told to go to the web to find everything is not the answer for a lot of seniors. There are some that embrace technology, but there are lots that don't have access with a device or don't have the affordability to be able to pay for a data package. And yeah, some are just resistant to it in general. So I thought, well, the one way that I could accomplish this was through a directory. They identified that they wanted a hard copy paper resource. So the idea of a directory was born. And some of the other ideas I had surrounding the directory was making it incredibly minimalistic, very little icons, very little imagery, just as plain as possible. So that's what the goal is. The other goal with the directory is to have all the photographs of actual local people. They're not stock photos, they're photographs that I've gone out and taken pictures of, and I have other people that are taking pictures of them. So there will be a more of a warm feeling to this publication. It will be more than just phone numbers and web addresses and street addresses, etc. So I wanted to have something similar to what I did in June with Rebecca. We did Seniors Week, part of the Seniors Week focus. We did 20 videos of seniors where they were interviewed. I gave them 5 minutes in front of a camera. I let them know that it was going to go on social media and that they'd have their 5 minutes of fame. I didn't direct any topic. They were allowed to speak on whatever they wanted. And I experienced there just like an overwhelming interest from the general public in hearing what the seniors had to say about anything. So, and the seniors themselves, I really felt like I was shutting them down. I was like, okay, time, you know, because I only had so many minutes to give them. And so I really wanted to go back and get some more from people, and knowing that, you know, that group of 20 had their chance, but there's so many seniors and there's so much wealth of information that would be enjoyable for us to read. So I decided that part of this directory, we could make that a place where we could put a few stories in, written stories. Yes. So I went with the idea of having school kids matched up with seniors, and then the student would interview the senior, arrive at a topic, a storyline, and write it up, be graded on it in school, and then the story itself would run in the directory. So there's 9 students and seniors that were paired up. And the first part of it has happened, where they've met their senior in a local rec building, where the kids walked over to it, and I had the seniors meet them there, and they paired off. And I did interview the seniors after that, had them fill out a feedback survey. And some of the questions I asked were, did this make you feel valued as a senior? Did you feel that this alleviated a sense of loneliness? Did you feel that this made you feel more engaged with your community? So the answers to those questions, there was 9, and 5 identified that it helped them with loneliness. All of them identified that it made them feel valued and that it made them feel part of the community. And then in general comments, they added that they were thrilled for the involvement with the younger people and felt that the students were attentive and engaging. A number of the students want to speak to them after the interview by way of using the telephone. And they're supposed to do that to verify details and facts that they may want to check up on for the story. But the students also obviously felt enamored with the seniors, and it was really a pleasure to see. So I'm anxious when the project is completed, because we're kind of in the middle of it right now, to hear what the students have to say for their response on how their time with the senior went. So that is in a nutshell, really what the initiative is all about. I'm so anxious to see the stories and to see what the directory looks like with the so with the local pictures and the senior stories and then the minimalistic information. I'm hoping that the directory is how I envision it, and that I'm having seniors also proof the directory before it goes to print, kind of with the slogan, "Nothing for us without us," and giving them a chance to say that they like the minimalistic look, or they, I have too much information on this, that, the other thing. So yeah, that's about it. I guess now if you want to ask what were some of the hassles for this, well, people getting back to you when you need them to. I started off in June trying to chase this down, and the school division took 6 weeks to tell me that they were too busy to look at it. And then I went with the homeschooling, and they were just all over themselves about how wonderful this will be and how they're going to have no problem matching me up with kids. And I followed the timeline that I was to contact them back and this and that. But as it turned out, September came, and the coordinator of the homeschool was inundated with all the stuff that goes on in September, and mine was just put on the back burner. So I couldn't wait any longer. I'm already at the 11th hour. So I then turned to a local school, and Rocky Christian School, and they, so happy. It was like pulling a rabbit out of a hat. They stepped up, and we just made it happen in a matter of 2 weeks. From the time I floated the idea to them to the time it actually happened. So kudos to them. And the other thing is, if you need 9 seniors, probably you should line up a dozen, because, even though they said they were going to be there and stuff, and the confirmation calls that I did 4 days previous were all good. And then the day before, I had one person back out, and I really had to scramble to find an agreeable senior. So that's, live and learn. And that's how these things roll. And when you're a coordinator and organizer, you take notes on how things went down, and you try to make it better for the next time you do it. I think that covers pretty much anything I have to say about it, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
There is one in the chat. It says, could you give an example of the type of story that's included in the directory? Have you had a chance to hear any feedback for that?
I don't know what the stories will be. How I asked the seniors to prepare was and this is my own thing. I just said, have 3 stories from your life experience that are varied in topic. And then give the overview with the student. We were together for like an hour time span. So give the student a quick overview of this story, that story, and the other story. And then the student was to pick the one that resonates with them. I did get feedback from one person who said, and he's not much for public speaking, he said he would have preferred if it was one story and he got to get a lot of detail about that story. And I said, I duly noted. However, my thinking was if the students were given only one story and it wasn't meaningful to them, I didn't know that they would lean into it and really pump out a good story. Like for a story to be good, I believe it has to have emotion and somebody that's invested in the topic. So that's why I wanted them to at least float 3 ideas with the students.
Thank you, Jody. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Did anyone else have any questions? They can feel free to unmute themselves or write it in the chat.
Arlene, I have a question. Is the directory going to be available online for the rest of us to see when it's all done?
Oh my goodness, I'd just be happy if I can get the thing on paper, Betty.
Is that my answer?
Yeah, that's your answer. That sounds great. You know, maybe what a person could do, because so much of the directory that is going to be pertinent to the county of Clearwater. So I'm trying to, and that's another thing that's worth noting about the project is that, you know, there are so many resources provincially and federally, globally. So where do you draw the line with how much information you're putting into a directory? So I've got 30 pages and there's 10% of that goes to advertising. So, you know, then I've got these short stories, which short is being the key word because they're going to eat up some space. So, you know, by the time it's all said and done, I have to be pretty picky about what I put in there. So we do have an incredible resource provincially called the Seniors Directory. And so Rebecca and I ordered, much to the chagrin of the people who received our order, we ordered 480 of those. And so when we hand out our local directory, we'll make sure that that's one that the province provides is in the same vicinity so they can grab one of each. And that's our solve for not having to eat up so much room in our local directory for resources that are really valuable, but we're trying to focus on just what's local to them.
There's another question here. It says, wondering if you're thinking about follow-up times with the pairs, not only to build their relationships, but maybe to lead to even more detailed stories that might be published in a small book or something like that.
Yes, well, it's evident based on how the students mingled with the seniors that there are some relationships that have already, you know, are budding. So, and one particular lady was so tickled pink that the student was captivated with her life story and was in awe of the things that she said. And the student said, would you mind if I just called you just to talk? Well, that lady just about burst into tears. So I do expect that the students, I don't know how much farther after the story conversations that they'll continue, but they might continue that. Like I said, I'm anxious to see their reviews. What other part of that question did I have a thought on? Oh, there's so many stories, right? There are so many stories. So back to Betty's thing about putting it online, maybe we could take the 9 stories and get that put online. I could handle doing that because I don't think most people care too much about the resources local to seniors in the county, more about the stories. So that may be very doable for us. I also thought, you know, the videos and the stories, there's so many seniors with good stuff to say that I could see it being a worthwhile project to make this an annual thing where the students and the seniors are mixing and we get a cumulative enough stories to put into a publication for the area. So. And I can discuss that with the school that I happen to work with, see if that's something that they want to put on the regular to-do list or not.
Carol has her hand up. Go ahead, Carol.
Hi, thanks. It's Carolyn Babiak from Lamont County area. Arlene, wonderful project. It sounds really good. And I know that there's a lot of difficulty sometimes in trying to engage schools, not so much students, but just the schools in general. But I wanted to just sort of tag on to what you were saying. What the Lamont County and District FCSS did is they had actually one of the staff members. And as they got leads, whether it be from coffee talk, whether it be from seniors chat groups, whether it was meeting them one-on-one or when they called in or whatever, they got some leads and referrals on what you'd sort of say interesting people. And then that staff member did a Facebook interview with them and posted it. And so it was a story, and it could have been about the good old days. It might have been, you know, leading up to Remembrance Day, and it was a war veteran. It might have been, you know, parenting challenges, you know, during a particular period, or sort of whatever. She made it relevant to the season or some of the trends that were going on. And I think it was really, really well received. People sort of liked the notoriety. Many did. Some did not want to be, you know, perhaps photographed, but the voice was there. And you got the passion and the intonation because it was them speaking. So we'd start off with some lead questions, but really the individual would, you know, would take that on and just continue with the conversation, and sometimes needed a bit of prompting. But that way, you know, it could be digital, as Betty was alluding to. And I think eventually, with all of this going on, almost everyone has to embrace technology at some point in time, even if it is having the school kids or their grandchildren or whoever, bring them up to speed, at least to know how to turn a phone or a computer on and get some of these things happening for them. So good for you, Arlene.
Thank you. Yeah, great ideas. I think the social media and the videos, Rebecca could attest to how well those were received, and thousands of views and so many positive comments that and comments like we had a very big span, types of seniors of any description. And everybody really enjoyed listening to them. So that was a really good clue that we were onto something there. And yeah, so that anytime you can get them, you know, putting them on social media, even though some of them didn't do social media, they still benefited because their grandchildren and their kids and everybody was like, I saw you on Facebook, you were fantastic, you know, whatever. So yeah, they made them feel special for sure. And I expect the same thing when these stories hit the directory, because their cohorts are the ones picking up the directory, right? They're everybody knows everybody pretty much in a smaller area. So they'll get some notoriety out of it.
There's a note in the chat saying about what Carol was speaking about, reminds them of the Shared Mic podcast, by Age Friendly Edmonton, and there's a link in the chat if anyone wants to check that out as well. Was there any other questions or anything else you wanted to add before we hand off to Jody to introduce our next speaker?
Well, thanks everyone for hearing me out on that. And if you have a delayed question, I believe my information will be shared, and I'm happy to answer that as best I can. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Arlene.
Hi, I'm Jody Wood, and I'm going to be introducing Tanya. And Tanya, we've taken this little bit of bio from what's available online. So Tanya is Dene from the Northwest Territories and is currently residing in Edmonton, Alberta. Many past accomplishments in the field of adult education, economic development, and building collaborative relationships. I'm really pleased to have Tanya with us today. I met her through a webinar through the Alberta Mentoring Partnership, where she's currently serving as the Indigenous Engagement Lead and also involved with Mentor Canada. And the focus of the role is increasing engagement and network and activities with Indigenous organizations, elders, knowledge keepers, and building awareness between organizations, agencies, schools, and stakeholders to promote mentoring opportunities for Indigenous youth and children. So very pleased to have her here with us today. And Tanya, take it away. I'm quite curious to hear about your work with Alberta Mentoring Partnerships. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that introduction, Jody. And thank you everyone for taking the time to come to this presentation today. I'm really honored to be sharing a bit about Indigenous mentoring. You'll see that I put together a short PowerPoint. It is the educator background in me that I want to make sure that I get as many learning outcomes from today as possible. And please feel free to also, reach out to me afterwards if you have any follow-up questions. My name is Tanya Tarnjo. I am Dene First Nation, originally from the Northwest Territories. I'm the mom of 2 proud sons who are much more grown than they are in the picture there. And I definitely have been passionate about building capacity building for Indigenous communities across Canada. I want to start with a land acknowledgement. Land acknowledgements have become like the unofficial call to action of the TRC's 94 calls to action. It's not an official call to action, but it is something that us as Indigenous people do at the beginning of our meetings, along with starting with a prayer. And really it's about how we get to know each other. It's about building relationships. And it's about also respecting that Indigenous people have been a part of this land in Canada since time immemorial. And that's what we say as Indigenous people. And what that means is that, we've been here upwards of 15,000 years. I was just watching a history document last week on Cleopatra. Cleopatra was 3,000 years ago. The pyramids 4,000 to 5,000 years ago. Indigenous people have been a part of Canada since time immemorial. And that's why it's so important that we acknowledge that we're on and we support mentoring for youth in the traditional territories across Alberta and the many First Nations, from Treaty 6, Treaty 7, and Treaty 8, and the Métis of the 8 Alberta settlements, and the Inuit people whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries. And just on that note, it is Métis Week. So there is 8 Métis settlements across Alberta, and if you are near one, I encourage you to build a relationship with your local Métis settlement. I do work for both Alberta Mentoring Partnership and Mentor Canada in the same role. As the Indigenous engagement lead. And as Jody put it so eloquently, I'm about elevating awareness about the need for mentors for Indigenous youth, being Indigenous and non-Indigenous. And I'm really excited to talk about, with you today to see if you see some opportunities for, bringing non-Indigenous elders to mentoring Indigenous youth. Arlene, you shared a great example of informal mentoring with your project and how that could go on to maybe a formal mentoring relationship. Not all mentoring has to be a year long, once a week. It doesn't have to be structured. And mentoring has been a part of our culture since time immemorial. So for me, it's so important not only to have Indigenous mentors, but also to have non-Indigenous mentors, because our youth need to know how to walk in both worlds. In Alberta, we make up 6.5% of the population. We are the 3rd largest Indigenous population in Canada. We are also the youngest and the fastest growing population. And this is so critical because we are assets, not only in Alberta, but also in Canada. But because of assimilation, because of residential schools, because of treaties not being honored, our people are not thriving. Our youth are suffering, our adults are suffering, our elders are suffering. And for me, reconciliation is reconciling with our past to make it better for all Canadians. Right now, we make up 6.5% of Alberta, yet we make up over 50% in the federal prisons in Alberta. Our education system, our youth aren't graduating at the same rate as non-Indigenous people. There was a study in Calgary just a few years ago that 60% of Indigenous youth didn't graduate. our youth are dying 5 times, 7 times more than non-Indigenous people. And we're highly underemployed. We're underskilled, we're underemployed, and we're undereducated. And the only way that we're going to reconcile that is that we come together as a community to make a difference. If we were equally represented as non-Indigenous, we could grow the economy by $100 billion with the GDP. And that just speaks to when that old quote, you know, when the tide rises, all boats rise. So by investing in our Indigenous people, we make it better for all Albertans, all Canada. Imagine our health system, imagine our education system. If more people like me were fully employed. So I wanted to speak a bit about Indigenous mentoring with AMP. We have a few Indigenous mentoring programs, pilot programs, but really my position is brand new, and I'm happy to say I'm nearly a year in this position. And it's really about identifying what makes Indigenous mentoring work and how to bridge that awareness and create more resources for programs that are embarking on mentoring, whether formal or informal programs. It's really important that Indigenous mentoring programs are supported by the community, that it's not silo, that the Indigenous community is aware of your intentions. And that includes our culture and our traditions. You know, it doesn't mean that the people who are putting together a program need to be educated in that, but it's about reaching out to the community and understanding what the local culture and traditions are. Many people the word escapes me. They think that our culture is, you know, equal all across Canada. To give you an example about the medicine wheel for Cree in Alberta doesn't include the Black color. But down south near Calgary, in the First Nations there, it does, and it doesn't include blue. So it's really important when you're dealing with Indigenous, you understand the local culture and traditions. As well, being on the land is so important for us. So land-based learning, going out on hikes, you know, maybe doing some fishing, just being outside is so important to us. It's that connection to Mother Earth. And having a holistic approach to your programming, because we're dealing with so many barriers and challenges as Indigenous people. Sometimes, you know, like Arlene was talking about, you know, basic needs, about, you know, having a ride somewhere, you know, having a snack, having lunch, having water, you know, maybe even just having a conversation about troubles at home. So just really understanding that it doesn't have to be so structured. And of course, for everyone, it's fostering those safe spaces so that everyone, you know, feels worthy, that everyone feels appreciated, that everyone has a voice. We have a really great tool available through AMP. It's this guide. It is a, how should I say, a big read. And something that I'm doing right now is putting this into one-page tools. I'm just going to give the link in the chat room where you can download this from. It's really an amazing guide that talks about many considerations for your program if you're considering everything from culture protocol to how to recruit more Indigenous people, how to embrace the Indigenous community. It was really well researched with many organizations and elders. And I encourage you, if you're not signed up to AMP, to look out for upcoming tools that will complement this guide. In addition, sorry, my thing wasn't working there. In addition to AMP at Mentor Canada, we're also adapting our resources, much like Arlene, to make it so that Indigenous people see themselves in the resources. So they're, to quote Arlene, they're warm feeling to the publications. And so this is an example of a resource that we put together through Mentor Canada that took a lot of research about mentoring and put it so that Indigenous people can see themselves. You'll see that at the top, there's the Métis sash, going into the sweetgrass, you know, working on Dr. Art Markham's research about the power of 5 and hoping that Indigenous people would see themselves in those power of 5. So maybe their coach could be their auntie, you know, the connector would be the uncle, the star would be the pathfinder, the librarian would be your local knowledge keeper or elder, and maybe your teammate would be your cousin. And so this one-page guide is really to show or prepare youth for what do they need to do to find their next mentor, and who are those important people that need to be in their life, and how to understand the mentoring relationship life cycle. And so these are just a few things I'm really excited about in my position with, raising awareness about Indigenous mentoring and finding more ways that we can improve quality mentoring relationships with Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. One thing I often get asked is how to engage Indigenous community organizations for support. So number one is identifying who are the local Indigenous communities and organizations. Started off with the 8 Métis settlements. How close are you to the Métis settlements? Who is your First Nation neighbor? First Nation centers are in most cities and small towns. They deal with urban Indigenous population. We also have Indigenous employment and training organizations, family and youth agencies, student councils. There's many ways to engage an Indigenous community depending on where your focus is. And, we Indigenous people are approached a lot for partnerships or for collaboration. So it's really important that you be clear with your intentions and benefits so that the Indigenous community knows why it would benefit them to work with you. And everyone wants to partner. Sometimes people are scared to approach Indigenous communities because, it's on the reserve, it's a different jurisdiction, they get funding for everything. But you know what, it's really difficult for Indigenous communities to provide great social programs because there's lack of funding, there's lack of capacity, there's lack of programming. So, if anything today sparks your interest, that would be welcome by your local Indigenous community. Mentoring opportunities, maybe, you have elders in a program that would love to sign up for mentoring programs outside of your program. In Alberta, there's a brand new influence mentoring program. You may have heard in the news that we had a mentoring program that was sponsored by Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively, the Hollywood stars. So the influence program provides mentoring for Indigenous youth in various educational institutions. Nationally, you may have heard of Inspire. Inspire has a mentoring program that you could sign up for, and you would be matched also with students in school. And to give you an example of this brand new Indigenous program out of Maskwacis, Maskwacis is formerly known as Hobima. They have a Maskwacis elder mentoring program that it's run in collaboration with the U of A that matches elders with young families on the reserve. And I just think that's the most beautiful thing. They're also on social media, and you get these elders, whether someone's doing it for them or not, posting on social media, posting tips for these young families. And then they get the one-on-one time with them. And I just think that's the most beautiful thing that could be mirrored in every community, not just Indigenous, that it truly does take a village to raise a child. And lastly, if you're interested, if you have, you want to create a local organized event with your elders and maybe local youth, through Mentor Canada, what we put together is called Indigenous Power and Mentoring. It's a 90-minute event that we provide, a cost-free turnkey event that whether you bring the mentors or we also supply some mentors, we have this great fireside chat that talks about career pathways, what challenges and barriers that maybe the mentors had to overcome. And then we put them in small breakout rooms of maybe 2 mentors to 3 Indigenous youth, and just having a more detailed conversation, interview tips, resume tips, where should you look for a job? A lot of times these Indigenous youth don't have great role models. Our people have been suffering from residential schools for centuries, well, maybe a century and a half, at least, for generations. And so the more role models that we can have for Indigenous youth, the better we could turn around those stats that I showed you at the beginning of my presentation. Masi Cho, that's how I say thank you in my Dene language. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have more questions beyond today. And I encourage you, if you're not signed up to AMP's newsletter or Mentor Canada's newsletter, please do so. I'm really trying to amplify Indigenous mentoring, creating more resources, and just, networking with everyone. I want to find out about more youth programs there. And I hope I didn't talk too much and left some time for some questions. Thank you so much.
Masecho, Tanya, that was great. I really appreciate you again coming today. I don't see anything in the chat just yet for questions. And can I see people with raised hands? Not quite yet. I guess just generally part of my excitement in having you here today is for intergenerational programming generally. I always thought that this was such a great match to make between the seniors community and the work underway through Alberta Mentoring Partnership. So yay, we finally made the link today.
That's excellent.
Yeah. And just for folks that are on the call, we do have Alberta Mentoring Partnership on the core website. So that's there for people and also in the chat.
I see.
We do have a question here in the chat. So thanking you for the presentation. And just a query, is it a cold call to a community, or how might you reach out to a community if you wanted to get to engage? Any tips on that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, a cold call would be fine. I'd recommend maybe searching the website. Most Indigenous communities got funding for a website that may list current staff, and I say may because there's turnover, right? And you may find a youth program or an elder program or like a community coordinator. Those would be good to reach out to, but also don't be shy, if you know a connection through someone on council to say, I'm looking to make this a connection. And absolutely, like I said, if you're genuine up front, people do want to partner. People do want to have more social programs.
I'm not fully sure. Tanya, we may be able to assist in setting up SIN number clinics to assist the youth, and you may already be doing this, but if not, would love to assist and link with colleagues in various communities. So that's a reach out to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm going to mark that down, Laura. I think that's a great idea for maybe our youth that don't have that yet, because it's so important for career development, right?
Yeah, and a compliment on the infographic, which I would also compliment you on as well too. It take too much to share right now, but if you go to Mentor Canada's site and search Power and Mentoring, we don't have that one free yet. I'm working on it being free, but we have 2 additional ones. A career conversation guide and how to prepare for your next mentor, free on our website, that is complimentary to that infographic. Yeah, great. Yeah, anything else? Or I guess maybe again, because it's been about, I don't see anything in the chat, so I'll ask you one of my questions. You've been in the role for about a year, I guess, maybe highlights and challenges so far that you can think of?
Challenges is that I guess much like Arlene, that it's hard to find information online specifically, that there's these siloed youth programs that are happening, and that if we can have, more networks like this, that we share that information, realizing, I know it's COVID, and networking has been so difficult these last year and a half, 2 years, but thinking about how we can bridge that more in the future, making people aware of who their Indigenous neighbor is, even within the community, not just outside of the community.
Yeah.
And highlights like the support, like it's just been so heartfelt that people want to make changes in Alberta, with truth and reconciliation, the 215 children that were found in Kamloops, we're up to 7,000 plus in numbers, so for me, it's been so heartfelt that change is coming, and it doesn't have to always be the same.
Yeah, I agree. I see that Julie has a question for you. So go ahead, Julie.
All right, thank you, Jody. I hesitate to ask since I'm on the team, but I always seem to have questions. First of all, Tanya, I wanted to thank you for your presentation, and I also wanted to thank you for your explanation about the recognition of the land. I didn't really understand that story. Well, not story, the explanation fully, or I'm not even sure I was even that aware of it. So anyway, that meant a lot. I really appreciated that. My question is this: when I think of applying some of the learnings that you have and the experience you have and the connections for that matter, it makes me wonder about our intergenerational linkages and the mentoring that goes on there. And you spoke about, I think it was a partnership with the university, but I could be wrong, that was almost like coaching or mentoring for mentors. And I just wondered if you might elaborate on that one a little bit.
Yeah, and it just made me aware that also through AMP, we do provide online 1-hour mentoring training. And it's also on our Mentor Canada website that just walks you through various steps of being a mentor. And actually it also has quizzes and you get a certificate from it. It's really great to start that conversation. Really for me in Indigenous world, because we've naturally been mentors, through generations, that it just come to this point where we're putting a name to it. But it's something like I'm an informal auntie to many youth. I have many nephews and nieces who are not necessarily related to me, and very much an Indigenous culture that we end up saying we have adopted children, or you might hear a youth saying, I have adopted mom, or I have adopted mushum. And it's not that, through the colonial way of adopting, it's through relationship building. And to me, that's what really mentoring is all about, is just understanding how to build those relationships, how to be open with communication and listening, and whatever training that comes with genuinely, I think that's the best training of all. And what, through the Musqueam program, just sometimes just making that connection, whether it's through social media or a formal referral connection, as long as it's there, so that when our youth are in need, that they have that support. So I hope I answered that, Julie. I kind of go off on a tangent sometimes.
No, it's good. I'd like to hear your thoughts about it. I appreciate your answer.
Great. Awesome.
Oh, so anyone else? We're almost at our closing time, I think. And just more, another thank you in the chat, Tanya. So, yeah. So maybe I'll turn it to Julie now. We could use the last 10 minutes if anyone just wants to share about what's happening in their community, because I think we talked about this as a potluck or a potpourri of what's going on with intergenerational programming. So anybody's welcome to jump in now, and I'll let you take it over, Julie. Thanks.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Jody. When we planned this, we were unsure. If there were too many questions, we would not get a few minutes to talk between us. And if we had 5 minutes, we would go for it. So that's where we are, wanting to know from any of you, what's happening in your communities, perhaps what either of these excellent presentations have sparked for you in your thinking. Maybe your thinking is, wow, I could do something else, or this has made me think about maybe something I could add to my program or whatever. So just to open it up to any of you to just maybe describe what's going on in your community, what you might like to see going on or what this conversation sparked for you. And I know it's hard to be the first one, but well, those of you who have joined us who don't know me, I should warn you, sometimes I pick on someone and say, oh, how about you? Depending on where you are on my screen. And if you're shy, you just don't talk, and then I go and pick on somebody else. So anyhow, back to the question though. Wanted to know if any of you would like to share what's going on in yours. Oh, Arlene, I see Arlene has something in the chat. Did you want to share that with everyone, Arlene?
Yeah, I just didn't feel like I fully answered the person who asked me to give them an example about a story that was written. So two of them that I know about, one was the fellow told about the best dog that he ever had. And of course, he was very tearful about the loss of that dog. And then another one was a really cool story that a woman whose father was at war, and he had named her based on something that he saw. Her name was Jacqueline, but it's spelt very uniquely, and it had to do with whatever environment the father was in at the time. So, and it made a great story. So those are a couple examples. We wanted the stories to be really brief as much as possible for space limitations, but also have a feel-good component to it. So as an example to your question of what type of stories, there's a couple. And I could also say we're rich in guide and outfitters in this area. So there were several that have, I'm expecting stories to do with, shooting the biggest bear ever or whatever. So it remains to be seen if that holds true, but I'm expecting that.
Maybe the biggest fish too. I mean, those are pretty common, aren't they? That's great. Thank you for that. That really helps in terms of understanding the stories. Yeah. Anybody else? I know. And by the way, thank you all for participating today. I think we've had, I could be wrong, but I think we've had our biggest crowd ever at 34, which was just fabulous. And we really appreciate you coming to join us. And I still don't see, you can use your hand or you can just speak out. And maybe I won't pick on you, but I did want to tell you that we've got a great little team. We really believe strongly in the value of intergenerational relationships and the linkages and what that can mean for both the younger and the older person or people involved. And I'm assuming that a lot of you are here with that share that same value. So we really do like to hear what you do in your communities, because sometimes we tend to think that what we do is not that unique, or others do a similar thing. So why would we bother to share that story? But I can tell you that all of those stories hold meaning, and they really generate the thinking of the other people when they're developing their programs. So that's one of the reasons we wanted to continue to use this platform to share, to build partnerships with us, but more importantly, between you. And we've seen some of that happen, and we're hoping that it continues to happen, where you talk to each other, you share your stories, you share your experiences, and you start to build some more or continue on with programs that you have. Now,
Julie.
Yes.
I just wanted to jump in just for school. I've had to do a few projects, and I came across this book. It's called Dreams, and it's from the Legacy Project online, where they talk about intergenerational programs and sharing stories between the generations, because we see now that we have some people have 7 generations that are still alive within their family. This book is beautiful. The illustrations are amazing, and it goes through the life of being born and all the different stages of life and how they're all connected and what we can learn from each other. So it is a wonderful book. And yeah, just because I also love libraries, so it is probably at your local library. But anyway, it's wonderful. I ordered 3 on Amazon to share with my family. So I would suggest checking it out at the Legacy Project. And they have a video where you can see the beautiful illustrations and explain the book. It's a great way to, I think it would build a wonderful program for your intergenerational. Anyway, just my thoughts.
That's fabulous. I'm wondering if is there any information in there, Charlene, that you can just enter into the chat to prompt people to know where to find it? Yeah, that would be absolutely fabulous. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
The author, the name, so that people are able to.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Charlene.
It's absolutely a beautiful.
We lost you, Charlene. You went on mute.
I just said it really is a really beautiful book. Definitely worth purchasing.
Oh, great. Okay, well, thank you for that. That's wonderful. Group, I've also put in the chat a message from the core team, and we would really invite you to fill out a survey about this event. They're very short, they're easy to fill out, and we just appreciate the information so much. And having said that, and not seeing, I'll just check one more time. Last call, people. Last call for input, thoughts, questions, and that kind of thing. And if not, maybe I'll just briefly tell you about the core site itself. We like to make sure that you have that information when you leave. So the group that we have. We like to continue these important conversations, as I told you before. And CORE is an online platform designed to be a sector building and knowledge mobilization tool. So CORE hopes to bring together community-based senior serving organizations so that collaborations can occur and for innovations to be shared and developed so we can better support seniors, healthy aging, and really all things seniors. And you can join the platform for free and become a member. And there you will also find just a ton of resources, events, and programs all around the province. The platform is shown on your screen, and we can give you the information about how you can join if you would like. And I'm going to copy this the site name in for you. And then if you have any comments or questions, I'll put that in the chat box as well. So please think about joining CORE. We're not the only group on CORE. There are many others that deal with that healthy aging and seniors, and I think you will find those and the resources there to be extremely helpful. So CORE, we've had a fabulous relationship with CORE, and I really encourage you. I don't work with CORE, so this is coming from the heart. I really encourage you to take the time to become a CORE member and see the fabulous things that are available to you there. And with that, maybe I'll just go back, Betty, to you if you have any closing comments.
Actually, I don't. I just want to thank my team for doing such a great job today. And thank you again to Arlene and Tanya, because I thoroughly enjoyed what you shared. And then to follow up on what you said, Julie, about CORE, it is free. There's lots of groups on there. What makes ours unique is our group focuses on the intergenerational relationships. So there's a discussion thread on CORE. I think we're all just kind of getting used to going there. So go to our group, ask a question, make a comment. Let's start a discussion going. Okay. So I think that's it, unless, Julie, unless you have more to say. I think that's it. Thank you again for coming. I should tell you, well, I should tell you, but I don't have the date in front of me. Our next discussion forum, like we've had today, I think we have planned for January. Does anybody remember? But from now until Christmas, we don't have anything planned formally, but feel free to go to our group and then watch for our emails and the announcement in the Healthy Aging newsletter, and we'll let you know. I think Julie's frantically looking for the date.
I am. I'm frantically looking.
I think it's in January sometime, and I can't even remember what the topic is.
I can't see it right now either. I'm sorry.
Okay.
But we will let all of you know with your permission. We will be really encouraging you to join us again.
Yeah. So does anybody else have a last minute question for us?
Just a last minute comment. If people sign up for the core newsletter, then you'll always be in the know about everything because
Yeah.
they'll have all of their events coming out regularly. So that's
point. Thanks,
a
Jody.
fail safe.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So on that note, thank you again. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.